Hi. This week, the group buy video will be back to normal. Well, sort of. I actually wasn't able to find any starting Keycap group buys, though maybe I just scrolled past them. If that happens to be the case, I'll be sure to add it to the community post at the end of the week. Anyways, without further ado, The Zoom TKL is a new budget offering from Mellitrix, the sub-brand of Ultra Studios. It's the bigger sibling to the Zoom 65, though the two boards do look quite different and don't appear to share the same design language. The Zoom 65 was quite basic, while the Zoom TKL actually looks nice and refined. The bottom of the keyboard is definitely the highlight and will offer a ton of color options, but what makes it more interesting is the fact that they'll be made of stainless steel, carbon fiber, or glass mirror. Glass tends not to be a common material used in keyboards, so I'm definitely intrigued, and from what I've seen so far in the reviews, it looks super cool. Now, Ultra Studios has gotten some hot water recently with their XVX Aurora keyboards, with the color of the Winter Breath boards being really off, and some quality issues found where their injection molding process were leaving lines on plastic cases. A lot of people were angry with their response, since they were mainly dismissing people's complaints, saying that the color was fine and the lines were within acceptable quality standards. But I guess with how many issues there were, they would have been forced to take a huge loss if they replaced every keyboard that had issue. Still, I'm sure it feels incredibly bad to pay for something and wait for months, only to discover that there are imperfections to the product that ruin how it looks. The XVX Aurora was considered a budget board, since the price of one is sub $200, but if you take away the perspective of the keyboard hobby and look at it from real life, it's still quite a bit of money. Now, it is totally possible that this issue just lies with their injection molding process, and since the Zoom TKL is made of metal, it might not affect this board. But I do think that we can use this debacle as an example of the customer service and how they might not have their production processes all set for mass production. The Zoom TKL costs $179, which puts it at the budget range for custom keyboards in this hobby. The reviewer boards so far have all looked really good, but as we know, companies tend to cherry pick and really ensure that the board is perfect before sending it off to influencers so they can get positive press. Ultimately, the decision is up to you to decide whether the risks are worth taking. If there are any major issues, I'm sure Mellitrix/Ultra Studios would handle it along with your regional vendor, but it is totally possible that some quote-unquote minor issues may be dismissed as under acceptable quality standards. For me, I think that the risk isn't too bad and the price is really good, so I would consider this keyboard. But I wouldn't really take my opinion on it with too much weight, and I think that you should definitely do some research on your own and make the decision yourself. The Aero 75 is a new keyboard from Gray Studios, the creators of the Space 80 Apollo and Wildcat's favorite Space 65. The Space 65 and Space 80 are known for their RGB lights, probably due to the fact that the two boards have a space theme, but the Aero 75 does not follow the same design language. The Aero 75 is supposed to be inspired by Aerosmith, which may not be obvious at a first glance, but inside the board there's an engraving that says "Dream until your dreams come true," a lyric from their famous song Dream On. The ribbon, which is quite unusual for keyboards, is supposed to be a tribute to Steven Tyler and how he ties scarves around his microphone stand. It's kinda cool how the designers put in these little details to show off the inspiration, but before I learned about this information, it kinda felt like this board was based off of hypebeast clothing brands such as Off-White. The board itself is quite nice, and there are plenty of reviews on YouTube that have already been out for quite some time, so if you have any doubts or questions, I'd highly recommend that you take a look at those videos. The keyboard is quite simplistic overall, though the layout is kind of interesting with that accent piece on the top right corner. The ribbon does feel kinda gimmicky, but it's not a necessary piece of the keyboard, and you don't have to install it if you'd prefer not to. Personally, I really like how the Aero 75 looks, and I think that the different profiles of the keyboard are really well done. The ribbon isn't my style, but I do think that it does help the keyboard stand out if that's what you're looking for. $409 for anodized and $429 for electrophoresis is not cheap, but I guess with the current economic situation, the prices for everything is rising, and the keyboard designers and manufacturers need to survive as well. While I probably won't be joining in on this group buy, I do think that it's worth a look if you're searching for a 75% keyboard. The Venn is a 65% keyboard designed by Gok, the designer of the famous 7V. While Gok himself prefers 75% keyboards, he noticed that his fiancée kept pushing the 7V forward with her MacBook to make space, so as a result, he decided to create a 65% keyboard to suit her needs. As mentioned in the Geek Hack, the Venn draws inspiration from not only the 7V, but also an earlier project of his called the Chiwi 60, and you can definitely tell from looking at the board. Similar to the Chiwi 60, the Venn features rounded, sloping chamfers that give it a clean look. It's not as flashy as the 7V since it has a more standard 65% look and does not feature a badge on the top right corner, but the chamfers do give it a bit of uniqueness compared to the other 65% keyboards. The weight does give some 7V vibes, but it is quite different since it does not make up the side profile of the keyboard and is only visible from the back or bottom view. It's a very simplistic design overall, though that's not a bad thing, and I think the Venn still looks quite refined. While I definitely prefer the looks of the 7V or the upcoming Type K, the Venn is definitely smaller and more usable for those who may be limited in desk space. For those of you who are looking to pick one up, it might be important for you to know that this keyboard will cost $420, which isn't cheap. The keyboards are being sold as in stock, which means that you should be getting your keyboard relatively quickly and we won't have to wait months or even years to receive your board. There will be a cap to the number of units available, but apparently they have a large quantity of boards and they will consider running a group buy if the in-stock units sell out. If I didn't have my 7V or Vega, it is highly likely that I probably would have joined the sale even with that price tag, since I think that the board looks really clean. However, since I do have those keyboards and I plan on picking up an extra 7V when it hopefully goes on sale next year, I'll probably be saving my money and skipping on the sale. Speaking of another budget board, QWERTY Keys is back yet again with another keyboard. The QK75 is a 75% keyboard that features a badge or knob at a cheap price, starting at $135, which means that it's around the same price as a QK60 and cheaper than a QK65. QWERTY Keys has honestly been a blessing for the community, as they've made a lot of budget boards that are widely available, giving more access to those who are interested in potentially joining the custom keyboard community. It has caused some issues where I've seen dumb comments left on ICs questioning prices for keyboard designs that are more complicated and not mass-produced on the same scale, but it has also done some good in preventing obvious cash grabs or lazy designs from going on sale due to the availability of QWERTY Keys keyboards. The design is quite simplistic like their other keyboards, And like the QK60 and the QK65, there will be a ton of different color options for the case and the weight. This time around, there will be an engraving on the weight that's supposed to say QWERTY keys, though it kind of looks like they spelled it with a C due to the aesthetics, which is kind of funny. Although I should probably stop buying keyboards since I have a decent backlog that I need to build, I just can't stop myself whenever I see a new QWERTY keys keyboard due to the price. I've picked up 2 QK65s and a QK60, and I have a feeling that I'll most likely be picking up a QK75.